Okay, so I'd like to take a look at some of the homework that did get turned in. And I'm going to work my way backwards, because I'm going to have to get that guy from you again. So I want to take a look at Susan's really quickly. This was the swimsuit, and in its essence, this was pretty much the way it should have been done. So I just want to show this to everybody. Again, I tried to be pretty explicit about how to do it, because I understand we're all struggling for time. But at any rate, if you take a look at Susan's, I'm going to kick all this part back out. She starts off with, again, she's actually got, this is one of the new swimsuits. So the whole trick for this was, and the reason I do this assignment is to start getting you guys to think about, instead of trying to fix something using tonal retouching or split frequency work or all that kind of stuff, if you can find another file in your shoot that actually has what you're looking for and you can steal that, it's just so much easier to do. So for instance, I trade faces. I do faces a lot. I don't like expressions. Sometimes I'll have a face that's in soft focus. There's no way to bring a face into focus, really. I mean, you can try to sharpen it, but that's not focus, that's just contrast. So I go through the rest of my images and I'll look specifically to find a new face, something that I feel like I can match up. It has to be for the same shooting. It's got to be in the same lighting. It's got to be all of that stuff. But it's just a simpler way to go about doing this, and to copy and steal the new suit, which is this part right here, so you can see what she's actually done. I'm going to open this up and see what she's really done on the inside, because she's made this a smart object, which again is also a very smart deal. And you can see here, in the suit that she's made, she's actually pieced this together from two different swimsuits. One has actually got a better top. It seems pretty good, whatever, and then she's actually gone in and balanced out the whole crotch area here, all of which works well. You can see she's puppet warped this thing. In my case, if it was me, I probably would have saved the puppet warping to this stage of the game, just because it would be easier to match it on the original body. So how on earth did you do that? Do you remember? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No, it worked. You could have had a copy of this body inside the smart object as well, and there would have been no reason to keep it. But you can do because again, there's smart objects inside of smart objects. That's not a problem at all.
I did do the puppet work originally on the image,
right.
And then I just smart object everything, so it would just be more organized.
Well, not only more organized. Yeah, exactly. It's more organized. But then again, anything that you do to it is non-destructive. So it allows you to go back. I mean, it's the ultimate not committing kind of editing. Yeah, no, so I thought it was really extremely well done. Then she goes into some pixel editing right here. Now this is a stage of the game where, again, I mean, I'll show you what she did, and her results end up, I think, being really good. For me, at this stage of the game, I would have done a merge stamp of all of this. I may have looked at her, the tonal stuff I would have waited on a little bit. She does a lot of tonal work. You can see, this is what her tonal layer looks here. This is her small one. This is her large one right here. All of which worked out extremely well. If I was in a rush and I was trying to do things a little bit faster, instead of doing this tonally, I may have done this using split frequency. So again, this would have been my new version right here. So I simply would have held down my Command Option Shift and hit the letter E. This is now a new version, and this is where I'm starting from, as opposed to that. And then again, I would split those and I would continue from there. But then the icing on the cake is the tonal layers on the very top. It's just that some of the split work saves you time. The split frequency work saves you a little bit of time. But in the end, again, I think it was extremely well done. And then finally at the very top, she actually remasks it again. And this is a really pretty smart move right here. If we uncheck this show the mask, I'm going to go back to what hers looked like in the very beginning. This is what it looks like in the beginning. And you can see it's, this part's actually really, really, I thought, well done. If we take this part off, you can see, and this is something that, again, I was going to show you guys, but that she's very smart about, and it's this. You can see here, I just turned her mask off right here. This is the work that she's actually done. This is the new suit that's been kicked way out here. You can see this part doesn't match up. Now again, for me, I probably would have tried to match that part, but what's clever about what she's done, if you actually want to take a look at the mask itself, she's actually gone in here and used this mask to bring the suit back into where the seam line runs along the edge of the suit. So this is what it looks like. So this seam edge right in here is the new, the seam edge from here out is the old suit, and then her new suit is sitting inside that seam. Does that make sense to everyone? A lot of people ran into this problem, and so it's just a good way to show that's what's going on. Because the edge of the suit, there were no wrinkles in the very edge of this guy. All we were trying to do was fix the material that was in the middle. So once you get it all covered, you can actually then go back in and use this mask to marry the new suit to the old suit by tracing it right along that line of stitching. And if you're really good and use a relatively hard brush to do it, it's flawless. Make sense? Okay. And to show you what that looks like really quickly, so has everybody got a copy of that Copy Me file? Okay. So if you take a look at this is Marguerite's, and you can see that we have a problem right here. It's this edge right here. You can see that whole thing is falling apart. So to fix this, again, once she's happy with all the rest of the retouching, select the very top layer, Command, Option, Shift, and hit the letter E. This is now a merge stamp of all of her retouching. If I turn off all the layers that made it, so that the only thing that is still on is the original image down at the bottom, this one, and then her retouching up at the top, then up here at the top. Does this make sense what I've got going on here? So everything got merged into its own layer sitting right up here at the top. Then I can go in, I can put a layer mask on this guy and grab a brush, the B key. In this case, make sure, like I said, it needs to be a relatively hard brush, not a completely hard brush, but pretty hard. So 90%, I'll give that a shot and we'll see how it looks. Normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow. Black is my foreground color because what I need to do is I need to hide the old seam. So, and again, working on my layer mask right here, I'm simply going to come in and bring that seam back. And you can take it pretty far. You can actually go so far so that you can really find where the seam actually is. So I can find where that seam is. And then hit the X key to actually hide the part so that I can run right along that seam line. And you can see, even though there's a color shift in here, sorry, there is a color shift in here. I might even try to do this with a pen tool and then just soften it a little touch. And then guess what? I'm doing this work, as long as I continue to paint a line, undo undoes everything. I really get in the habit of lifting that cursor quite a bit so that if I screw something up now, I don't have to go back and do the part that actually is right. So if I screw this up like this, I can just undo that part instead of undoing the entire thing. So just get into the habit of picking your brush up every now and then. Great, and so then this, I'm just going to snapshot this really quickly. So this is the difference in where things were and where they are now. Make sense? So again, that merge stamp is one of your best friends. All right. So Michael, I want to show you his really quick. He actually did, I thought, a really good job on this guy, but he ran into a problem, and it's just something, it just comes from experience. You just got to keep looking around. So at first glance, the suit part actually is starting to look pretty good, but does anybody notice anything weird up here? He knows what it is, but it's like what? there's something not right about this, wouldn't you guys agree? And it's this. Again, you need to go looking through your files to find out what's going on. So for me, I typically go back to the beginning and hold down the Option key and click on the first one. Then I'm going to click on the second one. He's just moved it. And then I'm going to click on the third one. And the third one, this actually does a great job of getting where he wants to be on the suit part down here. But then I'm going to click on the fourth one. It's this guy right here. And you can see that something goes off. And it's up in this area right here. It's just there's something that is more plastic about it. There's something not quite right about it. What's going on? I'm going to select this guy. You should be able to spot this. It's a 70% opacity. So I'm sure what Michael was doing, I'm guessing, Michael's right here, he can tell us, that he was dropping the opacity of this in order to try to register the suit, and then just didn't crank it back up again. And then he goes ahead and makes his new version here and then starts to do his split work. All but for having raised that opacity up, it would have been brilliantly done. Anyway, the only fix for that is to get rid of your split work and go back and do it again. Sorry about all that. And then finally, one last one I want to show you, Katie's. She actually did two versions of this, and I think that this brings up a really interesting point, so I want to show you both of them. So this is the first one I'm going to show you, and you can actually see in here that things start off really pretty well. Again, she's got, hang on one second. This is the one I want to show you first. So in this case, things start off reasonably well. There's some good texture that she's held in here. Things seem to be working pretty good on this. She runs into that seam problem again, but I just showed you guys how you can fix that, so that's not too bad of an issue right there. But you can also see she's doing this using high and low copy. She's doing her split frequency work, but she also did her initial puppet work. And again, this is actually getting really close. There's not another 20 minutes of this. She can make this flawless. A couple of things that I said to her that I would do about it. There's some blotchiness in here. Again, the tonal retouching layers like Susan was using right here would do wonders to actually blend this in. This is then just becomes a texture thing like skin. So again, I don't think I would ever go after this highlight. It's a spectral highlight. I would just let it go. But I would blend this out. I would blend that highlight out. I would blend that shadow on that part out. I would open this part up here a little bit. I would gradate it in. I would take that up a little bit. But those are all the things that you already know. There's not anything I can really tell you about that. But what I can tell you about is this. I think, so Katie, was this your second shot at it, the redo? Yeah, it was a vast improvement. In her first version of this, which is how a lot of people go at it if they don't know from the beginning, so this has got a strictly high-low split frequency work on it. She has not replaced this with another suit. She's actually tried to go in and get rid of all the wrinkles, and you can see the inherent problem that you run into with this. So she keeps replacing texture on texture on texture on texture, and wherever those edges, this is exactly the problem I've talked to you, and the reason I'm trying to get you guys away from using the clone stamp tool and the healing brush tool when you're doing skin. This is a consequence of what happens when you're laying texture on top of texture on top of texture on top of texture, and all of those edges are letting old texture and new texture mix. And in the end, you end up with this mess that looks like this. And Katie realized what she was doing and bailed, and then went on to something that actually worked. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so everybody has, did everybody copy the copy me file off of this? You need this. Do you have your computer here? There's a folder on there called Copy Me that you need to copy. Okay. I'm going to show you a couple of other things as soon as I get that hard drive back. So let me let Marguerite copy that really quickly. Did everybody else get that folder copied? Okay, good, because what I want to try to do on this today is I feel like again, perspective ends up being one of the most difficult things that there really is to understand in Photoshop. And in the composite work that you guys turned in, there's a lot of examples of perspective mismatching, and I want to actually fix that with you guys. I want to actually do that process so that at the very least, if you don't completely get a command of it, at the very least you know what to look for, things to think about. You can refer back to the videotapes and we'll be good to go. Make sense? Yeah. Oh, does anybody have, say what?
Something else stuck in there.
Oh, somebody is stuck in here. Huh, does anybody have another USB cable? Can you copy the copy me shit onto this to give to Marguerite, and I will see what we can do about this. There's somebody is, there's a part of the hard drive that's, somebody's is still in here. It's broken off somewhere. So, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, so this is somebody's, something is in here. Somebody has a piece of the inside of one of their things, whatever, that failed. Is that working for you, Marie?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, I'm going to show you just a couple of things really quickly first, just to, again, give everybody kind of a sort of a quick recap of some of the stuff that I saw. Again, just because please do not feel like I'm pointing you out or any of that kind of stuff. This is Connor's Skin as Retouch, and in some ways, part of this is actually was, I thought, extremely well done if you take a look at this. However, if you look at the tonal by itself, you can see this is really dominated by burning tones. There's very little, up into here, there's some dodging part, but mainly it's a burning part right here. And I think that that's why there's still so much texture left in this. If you see, it's all of these darker tones in here what are really making this up. So as I turn this thing on and off, you can see. So it's just a question of, I would have added some of, a little bit more of that. I would have looked at that part. Let me show you Susan's really quickly. And in this case, I just thought, again, I try to show examples of what I think are really pretty well done, and I thought that this was pretty well done. This still looks like skin to me. She took it, I thought, to an appropriate level. Again, this is what her mask looks like, I mean her tonal retouching layer, and you can see again how successful simply tonal work can be. In the case of Sarah, I thought Sarah had the exact opposite problem of Connor. I thought the two of them should get together. Their tonal retouching layers would have been perfect. If you take a look at hers, hers is actually, that's not the one I want to look at, sorry. Hers is dominated by dodging colors instead of the burning colors. And again, you can spot it. But one thing also that I wanted to point out, what is wrong with this? Yep, brush is way too hard. Look at how perfect these circles are. You need to be more subtle about that. Okay. So now we can actually start doing some stuff together. So if you look in that Copy Me folder, oh, by the way, hopefully, are you guys, so it's basically made up of files from Jose, Henry, and Katia. Are you guys okay with us working on your all's files? Yep, okay. So let's start with Jose's, his 10.1. if you could open this part up. And I'm simply going to double click on the hand. And when you look at it at first glance, whatever, it looks okay. You know, it doesn't seem to be too wrong. Do you guys think? However, does it feel completely right? Does it, again, this is that sense that I get. This is my perspective sense. And I have a sense that the perspective of this is off. So we're going to find out. I need everybody to zoom in to where the girl is and the whole action. So one thing I will say about this, and it's the thing that tripped up a lot of people, the things that I was looking for in all of this was consistency of lighting. About half of you in one of your comps or another made a mistake in the sense that you used the wrong lighting. But this, it matches. The lighting on the girl is relatively flat and overhead. It's not flat, but it's overhead. That's its direction. And that's also the direction that's in this scene. So this was the correct girl to use for this scene. The girl in the yellow would have been wrong for this because she is side lit and this is a top lit background. So it's a problem that a number of you ran into, and when I made reference to that, it's just something to be aware of. The lighting part, all of that comes to play into this. So, but I think this is a perspective mismatch. I also think it may be a slight contrast mismatch, but we'll find out here in just a second. So to fix this, or to see about the perspective, the first thing I have to do is establish the horizon line of the background. How do I do that? Converging lines in my scene. Do I have converging lines in this scene? I do. The path. So I'm going to hit the P key. This is ironic that I'm going to use the path tool or the pen tool to trace the path in the image, but that's what I'm doing. So anyway, it's the P key right here, and I'm going to click, and I'm simply going to run it along this line. If you do not see the rubber band, that's what they call this blue thing that I've actually got going here. If you do not see that, you need to go up to this little gear right here and make sure that you've got the rubber band is checked. So once that happens, what you need to do is you just need to you need to drag this out long enough to know that it's going to cross the other converging line over here. But you need to trace the outside line of the path. So I'm going to simply click out here, so I know I've actually probably crossed where this other converging line is going to go. And then I'm going to simply come back here, and I'm going to again start at the very top of this path, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to run it through here. So it gives me this is where my lines converge, and I'm going to simply click again. Now in this case, I'm not really trying to draw, I'm just looking for a reference here. If you do not have your ruler showing, you need to come up to the view menu right now and come down and have your ruler showing so that we can pull a guideline down on this, and then hover over the ruler that's at the top, click and drag your guideline down, and you want to set that guideline right where those two path lines crossed. That is the horizon line of the background. Did that work for everyone? Where's yours?
My lines converge more at her face than...
All right, well, that line looks good. That guy looks good. You know, Connor, you actually might be right. Do you feel like I've pulled in that path a little too close on this side over here?
Maybe there's a little...
Yeah, I think that one, I think you might be right about that. All right, so let's fix that. I'm simply going to go back. Again, if you want to get rid of anchor points, simply go back in time. Use your history. Don't try to redo this any other way. So I'm going to click and I pull this over a little bit more like that. And that's probably a compromise between where I was and where Connor is. But nonetheless, we'll be relatively close. So that's where my guideline is. I'm going to click on the path palette itself. I don't need this work path anymore. It was just to give me the horizon line. So go ahead and throw it away so it doesn't confuse anything. And then back to layers again and select the girl layer. So has everybody got a horizon line and the girl is active? Okay. We need to put the girl in the door. So hit the V key to get the tool, bring her up and set her right down inside the door. What I'm trying to do now, I'm going to zoom in on this. What I'm trying to do is give myself some sense of true height in this. And one thing that I have a fairly good sense about what is going on in this is the height of the door. So I'm simply sitting her there. I've just moved her in there, and I know right now for certain she's too big for this. Now, Again, in Jose's original composition, she's not in the door, she's much closer to the camera, so she is indeed bigger, but it's how much bigger? That's kind of what's going on here. Does that make sense? So my first move is I've got to size her correctly. This is a smart object, which works for me because, again, I'm going to do multiple transforms on this, so you want to make sure that this is a smart object. Hit Command-T to bring up the transform dialog box. Click on the link between width and height, and then I'm simply going to use the scrubby slider to drop her down in scale. Now, you'll see that what happens is she's dropping down in scale around that central anchor point. Does anybody not have their anchor point visible? Has everybody got theirs visible? This little, I don't know what it's the anchor point. It's this little thing right in the middle. So, if you don't want it to scale around, if you don't want it to shrink and pull her feet off of that background, I'm going to hit Command-Z to undo this, or I'm simply going to cancel out of that. And then again, Command-T, simply grab your anchor point and drop it down at her feet. And if you bring it down here, then when you do your scaling, it will actually shrink her down and her feet will stay anchored onto the ground. It doesn't matter. You can always move things. I mean, that part doesn't really make a world of difference. And I'm going to set it right about here. So in my case, I actually reduced her down, or in this case, because this was a smart object, I'm around on 19, almost 20%. Are you guys sort of close to that? Are we looking at this? Do you feel like that sort of seems like about the right size for her in that doorway? A little smaller, but I'm also taking into account that this might be, where is this? Yeah, I thought this was maybe in Japan. Again, probably doors are a little bit smaller. My first trip to Japan, I was actually shooting a playmate who was almost 6 feet tall and blonde, and we were mobbed. She was like a rock star. So yeah, but she would have hit her head on that door. Anyway. Get it close. If you don't agree with me, fine, get yours close the way you feel yours should be, whatever. And then I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that, because I want to start with what I feel like is a known scale for this. So even though I'm going to transform it right now, I actually go ahead and commit that transform to begin with, just to give me a frame of reference. And then if we look at the bottom, you can see the shadow, her feet where they still are where they still are. But the one thing that we need to do at this stage of the game right now is we need to decide where her horizon line is. So again, if I was shooting really super low, remember when we were doing the picture of that guy on the beach? His horizon line was actually right above his knees. And if that's the way I felt this was shot, I would have to move this way. But the truth of the matter is, it's extremely close to where the horizon line actually is on both of them. But if it wasn't, I would have to put those in, I would have to line those up at this stage of the game right now. Make sense? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is actually transform in perspective. So again, Command-T to bring up the transform dialog box. You need to take the anchor point off of the center here and bring it up onto the horizon line. Now, if you bring it over here to the side, she will actually transform out of this image towards the left. If you put it on this side, she will come out of this image towards the right. None of that matters. Just once you get her to scale, you can move her left or right. But you can leave this thing right here in the center, in which case she will come right at you in the screen. So now to transform in perspective, hold down the Shift key and the Option key, click on one of these corners and pull her out until her feet hit that ground, hit the place where those shadows actually were. And so now I'm really close to those shadows. Again, I said you can always go left or right with this. So if you click here in the middle of the girl and you start to drag a little bit to the right, you don't want to bring it any more forward to you. If you need to come more forward, like I do right now, to get her feet on those, you need to, again, hold down the Shift and the Option key and drag it a little bit more forward, because she needs to get bigger as you're doing that. I came a little too far, so I'm going to push this back slightly. And I'm going to go say, okay, now her shadows are mismatching right now, but she is in perspective. If I double click on this, we will kick back out. If you then come to your history palette and click on this and do a snapshot, I'm just going to leave mine snapshot number 1, and we'll zoom in and take a look at the difference here. She is now in perspective relative to that door. Does that make sense? And to see what the difference looks like, go up to the very top and click on Jose's original one. Does this make sense to everyone, what we just did? Are there questions about that? She is now in perspective. Now, you might think, oh my God, she looks giant, but she's not. Are we good on this? All right, you can close this guy up. You don't need to save it. So I want to look at Henry's next, and Henry I thought this was really interesting. This is very much the way I think about his work. If you can double click, it's the one that's actually, as a matter of fact, do me a favor, if you just closed up Jose's, open it back up again because we need to steal the other girl. So, and then also open Henry's up. And what I'm looking for is the one that's in the alley. So, first things that come up is this. What is this warning telling me? Should you worry about this if you see this? Or you just go, fuck it, I'm going on, I'm just going to hit OK? Connor.
You want to be a little worried about it.
What is it telling me, and what do I need to worry about, and what should I do?
If you have the source file, it'd be nice to have it in a larger color spectrum.
Okay, so what you're worrying about is that SRGB, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that is something to worry about. However, and this is something I go through all the time, I don't know where Henry actually got this background, but if you pull it off online, everything you get off online is in sRGB for the most part. So if he pulled this thing offline, I have no problem with it being that way. However, if this is one of his images, it's because the background image is the issue. If it's one of his images, that's problematic because he's working in sRGB, not in Adobe RGB. Does that make sense, everyone? So it's just a flag. And if you see this, you need to be worried about this. Are we good on that part? Okay, so how do I deal with this then? What should I do?
I would probably use the embedded profile.
You can use the embedded profile, or you could convert it to Adobe RGB. But there is no advantage. Again, he's got a smaller space sRGB. When he converts it to, so this is what happens. So let's just say this is sRGB right here, and this is Adobe RGB right here. When he does the conversion, that does not change at all. It just stays as a small color space inside a bigger one. It doesn't expand things, things don't come out, he doesn't get more color, he doesn't get anything, it just sits in there exactly the same way it was in sRGB. So there's very little reason to actually do that, so I'm like you, I would probably leave this as it is and simply work with the embedded profile as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. Then looking at this image, what can you guys tell me about it? Tell me anything right, wrong, anything suspicious about this, anything that would worry you about this, anything.
I think the lighting on her and the color palette of the dress worry me compared to like the shadows of the image and the way that like dumpster's lit. There's like a lot of pink in those signs, or magenta.
Magenta in the signs that are down on, like this part that's right down here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Other things, yes.
Too bright.
She's way too bright, right? Other things.
And she can be bright, but then you have to have a shadow of the light.
Exactly. So what Jenny's saying is that instead of the shadows being on the floor underneath her, indicating a top light, they would actually be running out to the side, indicating a side light, right? Yeah, the shadows have to match the lighting. Other things.
Something about the size.
About the size of the file?
No.
About the size of the girl?
The girl.
Yeah. She was also not in perspective. Anything else? So for me, it's a coloring issue as well. It's a contrast issue. It is a coloring issue. Again, there's something that could explain this light if there was a flash or something, or a street light up here or something like that. So I could try to rewrite the background to help explain this, but I simply think it's the wrong girl. But the thing that I was hoping you guys would spot is this right up here. What does that tell you? This is a 16-bit file, which makes it twice the size that it needs to be, especially if it's in SRGB, which also means that the processing it needs to process is twice as long. All of those issues have become a problem for this. So to speed things up for us, because I've already done this file and it'll drag my computer. You guys have all the latest, greatest. Mine isn't. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually convert this to an 8-bit image. To do that, come up to the image menu, down to mode, and come down to 8-bit instead of 16-bit. A lot of times when you'll do this, it'll say, well, we need to flatten this first, or if it's a smart object, we need to rasterize it. You usually have an option not to do that, so that's what I would do. I would say, don't do that. And then I am going to scale this girl first, and then I'm going to bring in the other girl, because it's easier to see the scaling with this girl, and so that's what I'm going to do. It's just going to be easier for you guys to see. Okay, so we're going to do the same trick that we actually did before. There is a guide on here, and Henry, the guide that's in here, was that a horizon line that you had made? Is that, or it is?
Yeah, I just used like the alleyway and stuff.
Right, that's what we're going to do. I think your horizon line is a little bit high, but we'll see. So we need to find the horizon line for this. So to do that again, the P key to get the pen tool, and I'm going to zip into this part right over here, and you can sort of see, you can even do edges that are sort of like this. I'm going to do this big black thing that's up at the top because it's a really good solid edge line. Some of the ground line, the mortar lines in here are a little bit harder to see. So I'm simply going to start up here at the top, again with the pen tool, click and drag this down. I'm going to make my image a little bit smaller so I can see this thing. And then I'm going to come back and I'm just going to hit one of these mortar lines right here, and I'm going to click on that guy and bring it across. Yeah, so Henry, I think your horizon line is just a little bit high, but again, not going to be the end of the world. I'm going to hit the V key to get the move tool and hover over his and drag it back down just slightly. I think that's actually closer. So anyway, I'm going to come to the path menu. I'm sorry, the path palette. I can throw that guy away. We don't need that anymore. And then again, I need to do the same trick that we did of the girl before. So I'm going to come back to my layers palette. Now, in this case, the girl it's been exploded. There's a whole lot of layers that are making up this girl. I'm going to leave the shadows underneath it, but I'm going to select the very bottom layer. Again, it's turned off. If you turned it on, you would actually get the whole thing. So I don't want that part on it. I just want to put all of this into a single thing that I can manage. So I'm selecting the very bottom one. I'm going to scroll all the way up to the top and hold down the Shift key and select the very top one. So I've got a whole bunch of layers, and I'm going to convert that entire group of layers to a smart object. So up to the layer menu, down to smart objects, convert to smart object. It's now put it all in one smart object, and you can see the girl looks like she's been knocked out, but she really hasn't been. All of that stuff is still in there, and if you had to get to it, you would simply double click on the smart object, and it'll give you that warning again, and we can go inside here and we could mess around with this. But in our case, it does exactly what we need to do. So has everybody got this smart object? Are we good on that? Okay, so then we're going to pull the girl up front, and I'm going to put her right by the dumpster. I'm going to bring her right up here to the front, and I'm going to zoom into this area over here. So, you guys know relatively the size of a dumpster. Where would, if I was like dumpster diving, where would the top of the dumpster come on me? Probably, yeah, I think, yeah, like right here, probably this area. I mean, does that sort of make sense to you guys? So it seems like it's sort of like probably right where our boob level is, maybe a little bit underneath that part. That would be roughly about where the top of it would be. So again, we need to do a transform here to transform this to actually make that work. So it is Command T to actually transform that. Again, I'm going to click on the link between the width and the height. I am going to put the anchor point right down by her feet. And I'm going to simply then drag one of these up until I feel like that the dumpster is roughly about the right size. So we said right below her boobs, you need to actually re-anchor her feet on the ground. So we're still going to make this slightly bigger. Sorry. And then simply look at it. Does this feel right? Does she seem like she is right in scale to the dumpster now? Does mine seem too big? Does it seem too small? What do you guys think? Close? Close? All right, so
Maybe larger.
you think she should be bigger? Just a little bit bigger? How's that? What numbers did you guys come up with? I'm at 143%. What are you? You're what? 144? God, that's just such a world apart. I'm 140, this is cracking me up, Katie. I'm 143.28 and you're 144. Are you guys somewhere close to this? Okay, and then go ahead and say okay to that. And hit the return key. So at this stage of the game, we need to reset their horizon lines. This was just to scale her in place at this distance. So to get them at the horizon lines, she needs to go up. So again, this is the horizon line of the scene. I'm going to hit the B key to get the move tool, and I've got to bring this up to about where I think the horizon line is for her. And that's pretty much where it is for her, is right there. Make sense? Just like the other girl, it's falling about through the middle, right around, sort of close to her crotch or her waist area here. So then again, I'm going to scale in proportion. You can see the shadow that I need to get actually back to. So again, at this stage of the game, she is in proportion to the image. In the terms of her distance, her size, she's correct. And the horizon lines on both of them now match. So to scale her in proportion, again, I'm going to hit Command T to bring up the transform dialog box. I'm going to then zip this anchor point a little bit over here to the side because I want to move her in this direction anyway. And then, again, holding space, Option, I'm going to click and drag her, and I'm moving in the wrong direction. What I'm trying to do is get these feet to be on this same line as the shadow. Now, you can, without doing any other transform, if you hold down just the Shift key, you can move her to the side. She is still in perspective. So I'm going to move her over to the side, and you can see she's a little bit too tall now. She's a little bit, her feet are not anchoring where that shadow should be. So now I'm going to, again, hold down Shift and Option to transform her in perspective, and I'm going to push her back a little bit so that her feet actually anchor in that shadow. And in this case, she is now anchored on that ground in the same spot that Henry initially had her, but she has been scaled in perspective. If we go ahead and hit the check mark, double click on the hand, again, the lighting is still mismatched, but she is not. She is in perspective. And if you do a history snapshot of this, and then go up to the top, and you can see the difference. You guys are into really small women. Does this make sense? However, I still believe that this is the wrong girl, so I'm going to go back to my snapshot because this is now scaled right, so I have a reference figure here for it to be correct, and I'm simply going to steal the girl from Jose's image because this is, the lighting on this girl is actually better matched. So I'm just grabbing the Smart Object girl from Jose's, I'm going to bring it over here, hold down the Shift key and let go. You'll get another mismatch warning, and in this case I'm going to say I want to preserve the color appearance. And you can see I've got to scale this girl now so that she matches the other girl in scale. It's just, guys, I just did a shortcut. I could have gone through this exact same process of bringing her up in front of the dumpster, scaling her to the dumpster, and sending her to the back, but I've already done all that, so I can simply fix this one. So Command T to bring up the transform dialog box, click on the link between the width and the height, and make the girls the exact same height. And that's pretty close right there. Yep. And then turn off the girl that's in the back. Hit the V key to get the move tool and set her closer to where she would ultimately be. So does this make sense to everybody so far? I'm also going to hit Command H to hide that guideline. So are we good on this part so far? Does everybody have the new girl in place and sized right and scaled right and in proportion? Are we good on this? All right, now I personally think that this is, the lighting still doesn't match on this, so this is how I would fix this. When I look at Henry's scene right here, what can you tell me about the background here? Is it normal exposure, underexposure, what is it? Oh, it's underexposed, massively underexposed, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, we've had this conversation. That's the mood that he wants, and I'm all about, that's fine, I have no problem with that. But I'm recognizing that in order to do this, he has either underexposed this file or he's pushed it down in post-processing, but he's made it darker than it would normally be. So I need to do the same thing to the girl. To do that, she is a smart object. The fact that she is a smart object allows you to actually use the camera raw filter, which is the best one to do this. If you need to change exposure on an image, this is the best filter to do it. It's much better than a curve. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to take my exposure and I'm going to drop it down a full stop and see what happens. I'm going to say okay to that. And again, it's a smart filter, so I don't need to worry about this. So again, if you want to see a quick before and after, select the mask for this and simply invert it back and forth. And you can see I'm actually getting now the mood of the girl, to me, is closer to the mood of the background. But the color is off. The grading is off. The background is really green. So again, I'm going to go back into my camera raw filter, and I'm going to take my tint slider and I'm going to pop a lot of green into it. And in this case, I'm actually going to hit it up into the 70s. Again, it's a smart filter, so you can always go back and amend this, and I'm going to say okay to that. This becomes, to me, again, I think she's still too light in this, so I'm going to double click on the camera raw filter, and I'm going to knock the exposure down to -1, and let's see what -1 and 2/3 looks like. This is beginning to get believable to me. Is it to you? A little bit of work on that shadow, and there is nobody in the world who doesn't know this. Now, you all know this. You all know that this is fake, but I'm telling you right now, you go into the media center and say, by the way, I'm struggling with this picture, and I don't know, come up with something, bait them. They will never say they think that this is a count. Are we good on this? All right, you can close this guy up. Is this helping you guys at all? Should we keep going down this road? All right. You can also close up Jose's first one. Let's go to Katya's next. Yeah, boy, I hope that preview is not what I get when I open this file. Okay. So, same question. What's right or wrong with this picture? If you've got those guidelines on there, just hit Command H and it'll hide them. Anybody?
The lighting,
What's wrong with the lighting?
it's not matching the scene in the back.
Right, can you describe the lighting of the scene of the background?
It looks like flash.
It does, and it's pretty much flash on camera. How do you know that? What's giving you that clue?
There's really harsh shadows.
Really, it's these really harsh shadows right here, right? It's the spectral highlights that are on the edges of the armrests, all that. What's interesting about Katya's here, though, is that instinctively she knows this because she's trying to match the shadows on the girl the exact same way. If you take a look at her shadow work, even though her shadow work is actually, looks like, that's just darkening her legs. This is her shadow work right down here. You can see that she's actually running it behind as if it was flash on camera, but the light on the girl is clearly a side light. So again, wrong girl. But again, there's more wrong girls than right. So again, that's not what this is about. This is about trying to start to spot these things and figure out all the rest of these things. So the lighting is wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and stay with the lighting that we have. We'll just accept that. What else is wrong in this? Does it seem right to you? Yes.
Since we're looking from the bottom, like lower,
Yeah.
I feel like perspective.
I actually think the perspective is pretty close in terms of the angle of the camera. So what Sarah's saying is that I think this is what you're saying, that you feel like that the girl was shot from more like this height, but the background was shot from a lower angle looking up. Possibly a little bit, and if that is the case, Well, we're going to see if we can get away with it. I guess that's all, because short of going in and shooting, people try to change perspective using Photoshop after the fact, and the problem that you run into is that it's a fake perspective. It would make her head smaller, or we could make her head larger, but it never really becomes believable. If this is something that was really that important, you would have to go reshoot it. Other things? Anyone?
Too small,
How do you know?
the chairs next to it.
Exactly. Exactly. This is now, again, you guys are living in the land of Gulliver's Travels, the Lilliputian world. So, where would a chair fall? A chair back, actually. That's what I need to care about. Well, stand up. Look at this. Do you feel like this is the height of a typical theater chair?
They're for shorter.
Again, it's an older theater, right? So you guys have all been to the amphitheater, I hope. If you haven't, you should get there. But there's a lot of older theaters I'm sure you've actually been to. And aren't the seat backs like lower? You can actually go in and you have to, in order to hit the seat back, you actually have to bend down to touch it. So I'm going to say probably about this area right here on my thigh. Is that sort of a fair assumption to make? So we need to actually scale her so that it is indeed that same size. So we can do that. I'm actually going to drop a line. If we take a look at the stair that she's actually on, it's going to be this chair right here. I'm going to grab a guideline and just drop it down to give me a reference. This is the top of that chair. So again, I'm going to keep her on this step, the one that she's on, and I'm simply going to set it so that she's scaled right. Command T to bring up the transform dialog box. Oh, I'm not on that. Oh, so if we take a look over here, you can see her image is also it's not just a single layer. So in order to actually work with it, again, I'm going to select the very top layer. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to keep her shadows. That's all. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and so I've selected 4 layers right here. I'm going to turn those into a Smart Object, up to the Layer menu, down to Smart Object, Convert to Smart Object. It's now a single Smart Object here, so I can convert everything. Command T to bring up the Levels dialog, the Transform dialog box. I am going to anchor right down here at the bottom of her feet. I'm going to click on the width and height, and I'm going to scale this up until that actually hits the middle of her leg, which is where we just said we thought the top of that chair would actually be. I'm going to crank it down just a little bit. In my case, I just boosted this up 152%, or that I'm at 152%. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. I'm going to double click on the hand. I'm going to hit Command H to hide all those guidelines. This is where I've got her now. Hit snapshot in history, go up to the very top. This is where we started, and this is where we are now. It's huge difference. There is nothing subtle about that, but there are these known quantities to you. Does this make sense to everybody? Did this work for everybody? Do you feel like she is now better scaled even though the lighting is wrong? This is a believable in this space. Again, the lighting is not my only problem. All right, you can close that guy up. Perfect, guys. We're going to get through all of this. I feel like, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll start working on your portfolios as soon as we get back. Okay, almost done. So let's go back to Jose's synthetic one. It's the first one I want to work on really quickly. So in this one, again, I thought the things in here were pretty well done, except for the shadows that are sitting down at the very bottom part of this. I didn't feel like the shadows were actually right. So hang on one second, guys. Yeah. So if we come in and take a quick look here at the shadows that Jose has done, we need to talk about and think about how shadows actually work. And in this case, in my opinion, this is making the girl look like she's floating 2 inches above the ground. And again, it has to do with the quality of the shadow, it's how dark it is, it's how uplifted it is, it's all of those kind of things. So instead of actually redoing this part, I'm just going to build another quick set of shadows with you guys, just because you can never get enough experience doing that. So in order to build what I think would be a better set of shadows, I'm going to turn Jose's off. I'm going to add a blank layer underneath this. I'm going to hit the G key to get the gradient tool. I'm going to go up to my gradient tool, click on the drop-down menu, and pick foreground to transparent, not foreground to background, but foreground to transparent, and I'm going to select the circular gradient tool. I'm also going to hit the D key to make sure that this black color up here in the foot really is black. It could be just a dark color, so every now and then I just hit D keys to default those two. I'm going to come back over to my image and click and drag out, and I've got a gradient. Has everybody we're good this far? Okay. Command T, we're going to transform the gradient. If you simply click and drag down, it compresses only one side, but if you hold down the Option key, it should compress it equally from top to bottom. And I'm going to do the same thing from right to left. And then I'm going to click and move it under this foot right here, but you don't want to click the anchor point, because if you click it, it just moves the anchor point. That's not what we want to do. We want to click and move the entire shadow. And then again, I'm going to then hold down my Option key. I'm going to narrow this down a little bit more. I'm going to drop it down slightly to get a little bit darker part there. If you don't want to actually see the surrounding border box and that anchor point, you can still hit Command H. It'll hide all that stuff, but it's still there and it's still transformable. So I'm going to leave mine about there. You can also use your arrow keys to actually nudge things, but I feel like this is pretty good right there. Again, I'm going to hit Command H to bring back that to be visible. I'm going to then come up and go ahead and confirm that that transform, and then I'm going to hit the E key to get the eraser tool. And again, the way I've got my eraser set up, I've got it set up as in brush mode, 100% opacity. I've got my flow around to 4% because I want my eraser to work like an eraser. And then, sorry. Yeah, I'll just do it by hand. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start just brushing back and forth to actually, hang on. I'm going to check the edge of that brush. I think that thing's a little too soft. Yeah, I'm going to tighten that up a little bit. And then, hang on one second, guys. I don't have enough USB ports. So hold on one second. This is so much easier to do with a tablet. Okay, E key eraser, and then again, I'm going to simply come in here and I'm going to erase this part right in here. I'm going to erase the other side over in here like this. I'm going to kick this around a little bit. I'm going to go back to the V key to get the move tool, and I'm going to push this a little further back. And again, back to the E key for an eraser, and I'm going to clean up that edge and this edge right here because it would not be coming off like that. And that's the first shadow I'm going to make. I'm going to do one more a line here, independent line here. Actually, I'm going to go back and take a little bit more off that front. New tool, G key to get the gradient tool. Click and drag a gradient out. Command T to transform this. Again, I'm going to hold down the Option key and compress this. You can rotate these so that they actually better fit the angle that's sitting right here. So I'm going to do the first one like this. I'm going to do it as the beginning of her foot, so it's a really much deeper shadow that's actually under there. Again, Command H to hide that, and then I'm going to use my arrow keys to tap it up a little bit. And I sort of like the way that one looks. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Hit the E key to get to the eraser tool and erase this whole thing. There would be no shadow in front of this girl. That would not exist. Took off too much. I think that shadow needs to be compressed even a little bit more. Command T. And again, erase a little bit of that stuff on the front. And then I would probably build another shadow on that. Again, I'm still feeling like this shadow that's on the first foot is a little too tall. Command T. And compress that just a little bit more. V key to move it slightly. Double click on the hand, click on snapshot for this, say okay, come up to the top, zoom in enough to really see what's going on here. So this is where Jose started, floating girl, and this is where we are now, anchored girl. Are we good on this? Okay, close this guy up. Only a few more to go, guys. Shoot. All right, let's take a look at Henry's other one. Henry, I swear to God, I'm not picking, well, I'm doing both of all of you all, so I swear I'm not picking on you guys, promise, promise, promise. So I actually really like the way this one started out. I sort of like the whimsy part of it or whatever, but I feel like that the lighting on the background is not really matching the lighting on the subject. Again, it is a flatter overhead light, so I agree with that part, but instead of always thinking that you need to change the light on the subject, you should also reconsidering changing the light on the background. So if you can't get the subject to match the background, get the background to match the subject, and that's what I'm going to try to do here on this one. Now, this one I'm going to show you guys right now, this is strictly my taste. Henry may take a look at this and go, I think it's awful, and that's fine. He's entitled to that. So this is how I would deal with this. I'm going to avoid the person altogether. I'm simply going to go down to the bottom and find his background. It's sitting right here. He's got a background part, and then he's got that rear wall. He does have an emulated depth of field issue here, which I like. He's got his wood floor right here, which I also like. So I'm going to actually do this right above his wood floor. So I'm simply clicking on his wood floor, because you can see the area that's above that is the shadow. So I want this control to be on the background between the shadow and the person in the background itself. Does that make sense, everyone? Then I'm simply going to add a curve on top of this. So I'm adding a curve. And then again, for me, just to do quick dodges and burning, or quick shifts in tonal range, I use blending modes all the time to do this. And you don't need to make a copy of all the background to do it. You can simply do it with a curve. It'll end up looking the same. So with the curve selected, if you click on this drop-down menu to change the blending mode and you start to go down through it, you'll see it changes. You get previews of what this all looks like. So for me, I'm going to go to multiply. I'm going to make that background considerably darker. And once that is considerably darker, I've got a layer mask on here, and I'm going to click on that layer mask. I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. I'm going to make it a much larger brush. Something about this size right here, if you want the same size brush that I've got, I'm around 900 pixels. You need to make this a completely soft brush, so drag the hardness all the way down. Make sure that it is 100% opacity and 100% flow. Now, if I could have my tablet plugged in right now, I would probably drop my flow down to like a 50% or something like that, but it's too hard for me to do that actually on this trackpad. So I'll be close enough anyway. So then working on my layer mask right here, I want to hide that effect that I just added to the background off the girl. So I'm going to hit the X key to get black as my background color, and I'm going to simply start to paint around here. And what I'm trying to create is a vignette on this background. That's what I'm going for here, is to actually make it feel like things are a little bit spottier in here. So I get this beginning part here, it looks like this, and I feel like that's sort of okay, but it's not strong enough for me. So to actually amp this up, I'm going to simply duplicate this curve layer. So I'm going to click on it and drag it down on this second to actually bring it down a little bit. Now I also feel like this is a little bit too spotty, so I can still, working on my mask layer right here, you can blur it. So come up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur, and I'm simply going to blur this mask, and I'm going to smack it pretty hard. Oh, my poor computer. I'm not getting any preview on this at all, so I hit it with like a 50 pixel blur on that, so I'm just going to go ahead and say okay to that. I'm also going to hit the one on the bottom a little bit, because again, I think the whole thing needs to come out a little bit. It needs to be less painted like. So same thing, blur, Gaussian blur, and go ahead and say okay to that guy. And that is not changing that one iota. Huh. So this is my mask. To see your mask and work on it, simply hold down the Option key and click on it and see if this blur does anything, because in my case, it didn't do a damn thing. Better. So I'm now up in the 170s. That's where I'm at with this guy. And we'll see what that does. I'm going to turn off this top one and turn this guy back on. So yeah, I feel like that even just this one single one seems better to me. Again, I'm going to throw away the top one because I don't think its shape is right, and I'm going to copy this one a second time and see what that does. So in this case, I feel like it's actually bringing in the stuff around her pretty well, but the additional one, I think it should be darker around her feet. So again, working on this second layer mask right here, I'm going to hit the X key to get my keyboard to be painted with white, and I'm going to remove that from this second mask. So it's taking part of it, but not all of it. I'm also going to remove just a little tick on this other one right around the bottom of her feet. And that would be how I would go after this guy. So again, history snapshot of this guy. So this is where things were, and this is where they are now. And it explains the lighting more on her, I think. What do you guys think?
Would you worry about the words in this, or is it, because it seems a little Alice in Wonderland and like...
Oh, very much so, but that's kind of in some ways the charm of it all for me. Again, it's an interesting question. A lot of the composites, especially the synthetic ones, have that quality to them. I don't have a problem with that. There's a whole history of that, a tradition of that. If Henry was trying to really pull this off as being believable, then again, it's the scale of the wood is what would be the giveaway here. You would have to pick some other kind of background. I can believe the wallpaper guy in the background. But the other things that I would do, and I've done this myself, is the other things that I would do is, if I really wanted this to seem like a real room, I would go online and I would do an image search for baseboard. There would be a baseboard that ran along the bottom of this. And if he added like a white baseboard or a dark colored stained baseboard, whatever, again, it starts to give the illusion that this is truly real. The wood, again, I think it's scaled up too big. It's really hard to find. These boards would be like 20 inches wide. That would never happen in a real world. So he could scale them down, and he could actually, if he didn't have enough wood, he could actually take wood and copy it again. He can actually, to expand it all. I mean, you get where this is all going, right? So, but if he wants to keep the fantasy element of it, I have no problem with that. All right, let's close this guy up. We're almost done, guys, and I swear we're going to take a break. We're going to make it at 10:30, I promise you. So the last one I want to look at is Katya's, her synthetic one. Again, this warning comes out, but again, I think probably this is, usually when you see this, it's usually a consequence. Did you find any of your background imagery online? Is that where you found it? No, and that's fine, I do it all the time. But that's usually why you get this SRGB warning, is because all of those images files usually are in SRGB. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. So in this one, again, this is another one of those cases where, in many cases, the things that I think are going on here that I would like to see going on here that are not going on here is if I take a look at the shadow, I'm okay with the shadows that she's put right underneath the feet. If this lighting was actually true, if we believe this lighting, I'm going to take a look right here. What you need to realize, and this is something that always comes up, so she has actually got two shadows down here. She's got one under this foot, and she's got another one under this foot, but this shadow on this side right over here would not exist. Hang on, let me get to my tablet again really quickly, because I don't want to do this work without it. Okay. So could this shadow in this area, again, I'm going to turn it on and off, could that exist?
Should be lighter.
we have it should be lighter. What I'm worried about is this. There is shadow right here on the floor in this part right here. Could that exist? Impossible. The light is coming from this side. That would be like saying that you could have a shadow right here on this side of her ear. You would never have that. The light is coming from that direction. So that's the first thing that we need to fix, is that is a problem right here. So again, I'm working on this layer right here. Hit the E key to get the eraser tool. And again, come in here and actually get rid of that entire part. I'm also going to tighten up the shadow that's on the floor a little bit. Now this part actually seems okay. Jenny thinks that this is actually a little bit too light. I'm going to change a number of other things in here that maybe make this a little bit more believable. But the one area that I want to talk about is this area that's right between her feet. So her toes are together. There is a side light on this. Would that shadow that's in between her feet actually be there? Would you be able to see the floor between her toes? This area right in here. Would you be able to see this area right in here? No, you would not. So again, a brand new layer on here. The G key to get the gradient tool. Click and drag out a small one. Command T to actually transform it. Hold down the Option key to collapse this. Drag it down underneath this a little bit more like this. And hit OK, and now this is what I've just added to that, and that is what that would actually be down there in that area. So, before I continue on this, does the lighting on the background actually match the girl? No, it does not. And the problem is the background is completely flat lit, and the girl is actually side lit, so we can emulate that. So to scroll down here, I want to do this on top of my background layer, but underneath the shadow. So these are the shadow layers right here. This layer 2 is the shadow layer. I want you to select background copy, and then I want you to come, again, we're going to add an adjustment layer to this, a curve. So the curve is now on here. I'm going to change the blending mode of the curve to multiply. It makes everything dark. Then I'm going to hit the G key to get a gradient tool, but I can't use the gradient that I've got set up. Again, the gradient I've got set up is to build my shadow, so I'm going to come up to the gradient drop-down menu, and I am going to go from foreground to background, again, white to black. I don't want a circular gradient, I want a linear gradient here to do this, and then working on this layer mask, I'm simply going to click and drag across to put a gradient on that. Now in this case, my gradient is going exactly the opposite direction, so I'm simply going to invert it, Command I, and doesn't the lighting on the background now fit the subject? And it took us, what, 5 seconds to do that? It's one curve and a gradient. The final thing in here that I don't believe is that, again, she would have a much stronger shadow coming to the side right here, and I don't see that part right here. So again, I'm going to go back up to my shadow stack, and it's right up here. This is the last one that I put on, was the, yeah, that's the one in the middle. So I'm going to add yet again one more layer on here. The G key to get the gradient tool, go back to changing this from foreground to transparent. A circular gradient, and again, that didn't look like that picked the right thing. Yeah, foreground to background. Again, my foreground is black, and I'm simply going to click and drag out to get a gradient. Command T to bring up the transform dialog box. Hold down the Option key, collapse these down, drag it down to where it would actually be. There's a shadow kicking out to the side of her. So I'm going to drag this out to stretch it out a little bit longer and then move it a little bit more under like that. I feel better about that. I'm going to collapse this a little bit more. That part feels right to me, so I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Immediately to the E key, because I've got shadow now that's on the wrong side of this girl. So I'm going to make my brush bigger, and I'm going to erase the shadow that's on that side. And in this case, I'm going to, again, snapshot this, history snapshot, and say OK, and go up to the top. And this is where we started. Oh, wait, I've got to do one last thing. I think this background is also too sharp. So again, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. She did do a depth of field emulation for the floor, but the background is still too sharp. So before you blur the background, turn it into a smart object. so that you can change it, and then blur that. And again, Gaussian blur, and I'm not going to hit it with 170, more like a 2. Yeah. Maybe more like a 3. Perfect. And then I'm going to snapshot that. And so this is where things began. And this is where we are now. Make sense? So are there questions about any of this? Are we good on this? Okay, guys, it's exactly 10:30. If you give me back a 11:15, we'll start working on all of our branding stuff. Oh, do me a favor before you split. What I want to do is, did everybody have a chance to do their little baby prints for us to do sequencing, that kind of stuff? Are we all good on that? Mostly? Some of you? Any of you? I did it. Okay. What I would like to do, and have you guys had a chance to to turn in your elevator pitch and your branding online? What I would like to do, so if you've got time to do this right now, if you haven't done it, I would like to, when we are looking at your images, I want to be able to look at either your elevator pitch, your branding statement, or both. Because what I'm trying to do is say, okay, is what you think you are and what we're looking at connected? Make sense? So if you haven't submitted your elevator pitch or your branding statement on Canvas, try to get that done before we get back. I'll see you guys in 15.